Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Rising. We have an amazing show planned for you today. Robby, go ahead and tell us, what do we have?
Useful Idiots podcast host Katie Halper wades through the downright disturbing testimony given by the U.S. women's gymnast who suffered for years at the hands of sexual abuser Larry Nassar. And Arthur Delaney discusses why Democrats are shying away from higher taxes on capital gains.
But first, the Biden administration and House progressives suffered a major blow on Wednesday when a measure crucial to their landmark legislation aimed at reducing prescription drug prices failed to clear the Energy and Commerce Committee. Three centrist Democrats, Representatives Kurt Schrader of Oregon, Scott Peters of California, and Kathleen Rice of New York, broke with the party and sunk the bill that would allow the Department of Health and Human Services to negotiate drug prices under Medicare. The lawmakers said they feared the legislation was fiscally irresponsible and would hurt innovation in the prescription drug industry, despite approval among roughly 90% of voters.
Friend of the show, David Sirota, and founder of the Daily Poster, is reporting that the three reps have significant monetary ties to Big Pharma. Combined, they've reportedly raked in $1.8 million in donations from the pharmaceutical industry. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders weighed in on the vote, saying, quote, "I understand that the pharmaceutical industry owns the Republican Party and that no Republican voted for this bill, but there is no excuse for every Democrat not supporting it." So, I mean, what's the story here? They're just bought and paid for by Big Pharma. You don't think any of their concerns are legitimate here?
Well, what's amazing is that Rice and Peters voted for this in 2019. Mm-hmm. So this drug pricing scheme, this plan to allow Medicare to negotiate with Big Pharma to lower drug prices has been the cornerstone of House Democrats' elections in swing districts in 2018 and 2020. This is the only thing they've been running on for 2 years. And so after they took the House in 2018, they hashed all this out in the Energy and Commerce Committee in Ways and Means. And they came to an agreement with both wings of the party on how they would go about these negotiations. And Peters and Rice both voted for it. They voted for it. Now they're saying, and Peters said at the time that, well, I'm only voting for this because I know it's not going to pass. So now that it might actually pass, they're voting against it. Kathleen Rice's argument is the most disingenuous, arguably, because she's saying that it's fiscally, that she won't support a reconciliation package that is fiscally irresponsible. This saves the government $600 billion. Like this is the fiscal headroom for the spending.
Right.
So she wants it all different ways. She wants to be able to vote for it when it's not going to be able to pass. She wants to be able to vote against it when it might actually happen. And she wants to say she's for reducing government spending when that might not actually matter, unless it hits Big Pharma. Then she's not for reducing government spending. That type of government spending she's totally fine with.
Yeah.
Well, I actually want to kind of pick apart a little bit of what Bernie Sanders said about the Republicans are the ones who are bought off by Big Pharma, because in actuality, when you look at the numbers from Open Secrets, the Democratic Party they are much more bought off by the pharmaceutical company than Republicans are. In the 2020 election cycle, Democrats received $30.8 million compared to Republicans that received $16.7. They're also raising about double the amount of money currently for the 2022 cycle. Democrats actually, the way this has worked when you look back in history, Democrats, in the early 2000s for sure, Republicans were much more bought off. But once you hit the 2008, when Obama came in and people were really worried about, single-payer health care, the Democrats started to be bought off by Big Pharma. Then it shifted again. So they were spending, the pharmaceutical and health industry was spending a lot on Democrats for those years during Obama. Then it shifted again to Republicans to help try to fight Medicare, Obamacare, right? They kept saying they were going to repeal the ACA. So they received quite a bit of money. But it flipped again in 2018, but very, very starkly in 2020. $30.8 million compared to $16.7 for Republicans. I don't think you can make the claim that it's the Republicans who are bought off. And even in this election cycle in 2022, they are nearly double the fundraising again. So they're on track to have this same sort of number. So Democrats are the ones bought off.
Yeah, what you see
So
there.
This is no surprise.
Yeah, what you see there is two things. One, New Jersey is where New York and New Jersey are where the industry is really concentrated, and so you're going to see probably a third. Mm-hmm. We could look at the numbers, but I bet a third of that pharma money is going to Democrats in New Jersey who are, completely in the tank for big pharma. In fact, Pallone, the chair of Energy and Commerce, is from New Jersey, even though he's been pushing against big pharma the last year or so. The second thing that you see in those numbers flipping, it's not a coincidence that it flips after 2018. These industries give more money to the party in power.
You're right.
Than the out party. And so once Republicans,
which is true for all industries,
every industry. So Wall Street, you take over.
Guns. Yeah.
Except for guns right now, but that's not even really an industry-driven thing as much as an NRA kind of driven thing. But it's not over yet. So here's where it goes from here. So the package advances through the Energy and Commerce Committee. Next, it can go over to Ways and Means. Richie Neal, the chairman over there, is also in the tank for every industry that you can think of, but he's under a lot of pressure to get this done. If it doesn't get through in Ways and Means, even though it has in the past, it goes to the Budget Committee, where John Yarmouth is a real foe of the drug industry, and it goes into the Budget Committee as what's called a manager's amendment. So there are multiple ways, and then if it doesn't get in the Budget Committee, they can actually take it as a manager's amendment straight to the House floor and force people like Rice to then, you're not just voting against this one provision, you'd have to take down the entire thing.
I was reading that they were saying their concern here, the representatives, is that drug companies, their price, their margins, their profit margins might be cut, and then they wouldn't be as much innovation. And obviously, we're relying on scientific innovation, medical innovation right now. I think it's never been more apparent why that's important and maybe an appropriate concern. My answer to that would probably be, well, are there regulations we can cut? Can we reduce the FDA's ability to prevent these companies from bringing life-saving drugs to market for years and years and years? So that would be that's how I, as a libertarian, would try to address this issue.
Right, but most drug funding is done by the government anyway, through the NIH and through other taxpayer funds. So as long as that money keeps flowing, then we should be able to continue research. But that is always their go-to. That if you cut our profits, that we're not going to be able to research as many drugs. Forget the hundreds of millions of dollars spent lobbying and spent on marketing and the billions spent on dividends and bonuses. That stuff will keep happening, but we won't be able to do the research on life-saving drugs. And by life-saving, they mean dealing with baldness, like the things that like middle-class men are going to spend money on. That's where.
We might be spending, my friend. We might be there one day.
Any day now. Don't worry. No question. And the other thing is that this became partisan. So Republicans, Trump, pushed for lowering drug prices. This was something he talked about a lot. He tried to cut a deal with Pelosi. It never came together. When he was doing that, you had a decent number of Republicans in the House who were willing to go along with it. But this is now a Democratic reconciliation package. So you could put anything in there, and every Republican is going to vote against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I just am really suspicious of the people that vote against it. I mean, again, the Democratic Party is fundraising a lot more money from the pharma industry. And I would be looking at are these people up for re-election? Are they definitely going to be losing their seats? Are they just being used as, okay, you go ahead and vote no on it because the rest of us can vote yes so that we can save face. But then you're already going to be a goner. You're not going to be here anymore. I mean, they do this all the time. So I'd be looking at those who are voting against it to see, how vulnerable are they? Are they even going to potentially be coming back? Will it hurt them in their own districts? So can they just be the fall guy?
America loves a Democrat with a centrist or moderate voting record right now. We're in a moment where that is a very popular place to be. Now, I know you're going to say that, well, this isn't really the moderate option when it's so supported, et cetera. But cultivating a reputation as someone who is a Democrat but fights back against Nancy Pelosi and the far left, et cetera, is just like a very sweet spot to be right now politically.
Right, although except two things on that. So Rice represents now a pretty comfortable Long Island district, and the word on her is that she doesn't really see herself as long for this world in the House. Like, she ran for Attorney General, or she has wanted to run for Attorney General in the past. She's probably going to try to run for Attorney General again. Former Nassau prosecutor. So she could also see her district be redrawn by Democrats in retaliation for this. But ultimately, she has ambitions statewide. So does the rising kind of DSA-fueled left in New York create some type of power center that can block her going forward in retaliation for this? Peters won a competitive primary in, was it San Diego, right, Kim, against a progressive. It was very close. It was 2012. The entire kind of national progressive infrastructure got behind, I think, Linda Saldana, and he beat her by like 1,000 votes and has gone on to be Wall Street's and the drug industry's biggest champion. So just, that's how much primaries matter. You win by a few thousand votes, and it can shift the course of that district for the next 10 plus years. Schrader is a blue dog who represents this rural district in Oregon. He's just a thorn in the Democrat side. He's like, there used to be dozens of him back in 2006, 2008. Now there's just a handful of him. Right. His district is going to get redrawn, and we'll see what that looks like in Oregon. Rice basically challenged Pelosi and tried to cost her the speakership the last time around. And so Pelosi doesn't exactly have a whole lot of leadership. Doesn't have a whole lot of leverage over her. Yet, when Rice competed with AOC for New York's seat on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which was open because Eliot Engel got knocked out by Jamal Bowman, the party leadership put Rice on the Energy and Commerce Committee and screwed over AOC because they were just angry that AOC was backing primaries. And now look who's screwing the Democratic Party itself. So that it calls to mind the whole reaping and sowing meme.
Right. Well, according to David Dayen, not all hope is lost on drug price reform. Dayen notes that the Budget Committee can always fit it back in with a manager's amendment, and because it provides at least $700 billion in budget savings for the overall bill, the committee almost certainly will. So not all hope is lost. Right.
It's coming back, but Big Pharma is not going to just roll over.
Right.
And I think they'll also try to do whatever they can to tweak the wording of it. So that they can come in then in the rulemaking side and in the regulatory side and undercut it.
I did really want to talk about this. A new proposal put forward in the House this week would raise or impose taxes on a wide array of products, including cigarettes, cigars, and vaping devices, as a potential source to help finance the $3.5 trillion economic package. According to the Washington Post, some say that the plan violates Biden's pledge not to raise taxes on lower-income Americans, but also achieves an important public health goal. According to the CDC's latest data on adults who smoke in the U.S., in 2019, cigarette smoking was highest among people with a low annual household income, with about 21% of adults who smoke making less than $35,000 a year. I'm a big sort of opponent of sin taxes. AOC is at a gala earlier this week with a tax the rich, dress, and here we're gonna tax cigarette smokers. That's not the rich. that's the
right.
the low. So then it's a bait and switch. Well, it's about, then they'll say, well, it's good for their health if we kind of incentivize people not to smoke. Okay, so then this is a health measure. I thought this was about economic equality. What do you think, Kim?
Yeah, obviously what we need to be doing is taxing the people in the upper echelons of society and not going after those who might be imbibing in whatever it is that they feel like they need to in order to calm their anxieties down, or since they're having a tough time paying their bills or whatever it might be, right? This is what we always seem to do, sort of like the war on drugs. It was like go after the user, and now with and you're right, is this a health thing? So are we going after them in order to stop smoking, or are we going after them because we're trying to raise taxes? If we're trying to raise taxes, how much is a tax on smoking actually going to raise compared to what we're not taxing, the rich? They're getting away with tons of taxes.
And also throwing vaping in there. For a lot of people, vaping is an alternative to smoking. It is much, as far as we can tell, to the science says right now, it is much, much less bad for you than smoking. A lot of people have successfully quit smoking because they can vape. There's a huge moral panic right now in the federal government about kids vaping, but to the extent they're doing this instead of smoking, and we're still kind of grappling with the research to decide decide, how much it's a substitution and how much it's just a new thing. But it looks to me like you would not want to be punishing people who are vaping at the same time. I think it's a huge moral panic issue right now. So, which is, often Republicans are motivated by, what about the children kind of worries. But this is, here's an example of Democrats doing that, in my opinion.
Sorry.
Yeah, the irony.
I just want to say, I think technically that the tax is on the company and not on the person, but the company then
they raise the price of the product.
Right? Yeah. So that's kind of to clarify.
Right, and the irony here would be that they'd be going after this because they're trying to squeeze money out of pharma, they're trying to squeeze money out of capital gains and out of the super rich, and they're getting pushed back against by these powerful centers. So they're like, you know what? Let's go hit the smokers for the money. Like it's pathetic. And then after people get sick, they have to pay higher prices for their medications because they couldn't manage to push back against big pharma. You can be for or against this from a public health perspective, but you can't say that it's not a middle class and poor tax. Like that's what it is. So you just have to be honest about that. Lot more of this fight still to come, and we'll have more Rising right after this.